Good afternoon, everyone. I'm David Talbot, Managing Director and Head of Research at Red Cloud Securities. We extend thanks to Pear Tree for sponsoring this session. I introduce Leigh Curyer, he's CEO of NexGen Energy, to the audience. NexGen is moving the Arrow project, which I believe is the world's best uranium deposit, towards production in the Athabasca Basin. And so, Leigh, if you have about 10, 12 minutes, and then we'll have some time for Q&A at the end of the session. Attendees, please feel free to ask any questions using the Q&A link, and we'll get to as many as we can. So take it away, Leigh.
Thank you very much, David, and thank you to everyone at Red Cloud. What a fabulous conference this is. Look, in the interest of time, let's get straight to the point. Want to make a real difference with respect to cleaning the air, which is the #1 priority for the planet as we speak and going forward for the future generations. Just want to show a bit of an analogy here. Tesla, they produce 500,000 electric vehicles every year, and they are the conduit of electricity. They're still heavily reliant on the source of that power, which is still coming from carbon emitting sources. Tesla's current market cap, 600 billion US. Now, the uranium industry, it fuels reactors globally, which removes over 500 million car equivalents of CO2 per year. It's incredible when you think about that. 100 times that of what, or 1,000 times what Tesla actually produces. And the market capitalization of the uranium industry is still around 20 billion US. It's about 3% of Tesla's market cap. So the opportunity here for investors in the uranium market is extraordinary. And I think Tesla's valuation reflects the general population's appreciation of electricity and decarbonisation. But the real impetus here is going to be the uranium industry. NexGen alone is going to eliminate the equivalent of 70 million car equivalents of CO2 per year when in production. I think, look, a lot's been discussed about the space and nuclear energy and the market and uranium market, but I've been in the industry since 2002, and I've got to say I've never felt the generalists out there have been so supportive of nuclear energy. It really does feel back in November when Boris Johnson came out and said the UK is going to be heavily reliant on nuclear power for its carbon reduction goals. You had Biden come in, re-sign the Paris Agreement. The US Energy Secretary comes out and says nuclear energy is going to be the foundation of our goal of carbon neutrality of our electrical grid by 2035. Elon Musk is pro-nuclear. And even in Australia, where I'm from, I saw a recent news poll the other day that 82% were in favour of a small modular reactor industry in Australia. I would have thought only 5 years ago that would have been 82% against. But I can tell you the view on nuclear power has shifted from a false ideology, which has influenced it in the past, to now the generalists having a real appreciation of the actual science of nuclear energy, its incredible power delivery, reliable power delivery, and non-carbon emitting. Just very, very simply, and I don't want to take too much time on this, there's a huge supply deficit coming. And NexGen Energy, which I'm about to go through, will produce 30 million pounds or capable of 30 million pounds per annum when in production. And I just want to note, between now and when NexGen Energy goes into production, that the production coming along from Arrow is not even going to be sufficient enough to replace lost production between now and when we go into operation, let alone the demand curve growing substantially, eating up secondary supplies. The world is going to need three and a half times Arrow production capability coming online in the latter part of this decade. And so it's an incredible opportunity for many uranium companies out there, a lot who are presenting on the Red Cloud platform during this conference. And it's an incredibly exciting time for all those companies who have been hard at it for the last decade. to be in this position and to meet this crucial global initiative of clean energy supply. Onto the Arrow project. Well, it's one of, as David said, he believes it's the best in uranium. That's true. It's one of the best in resources, all resources in terms of copper, gold equivalent, etc. It's one of the best mineral resources on the planet. It's low cost and environmentally elite. It's on the lowest end on the cost curve. It's long life. Our feasibility study, which I'll take you through in a moment, is just based on the high-grade heart of the Arrow mineralization over 11-year mine life. We are permitting for a 24-year operating life at a minimum, which conveys our confidence in the resource growth at Arrow, particularly with respect to additional zones of mineralization. And then as for jurisdiction, which is incredibly important, well, we're in the #1 province in the world for developing and operating a uranium mine. Just going into the high level outcomes of the feasibility study that we released in February of 2021, it's a 1.3 billion capex, but it has at a $50 uranium price, which is where we're about now. It has a 0.9 of a year payback. That's 11 months. And it'll be producing on average 28.8 million pounds over its first 5 years of its life. Now, the after-tax, and I'm saying this is very, very important, the after-tax net cash flow is over $1 billion at $50 a pound uranium. Now, that would take us into the top 15 mining companies worldwide. The top 15 of all mining companies worldwide based on after-tax free cash flow annually. And then at $75 a pound, well, we're knocking on the door of the top 5. Now, that's an incredible opportunity coming from a single mine, which is one of the tiniest underground mines on the planet and in the best location in the planet with an elite ESG profile. I mentioned before, it's actually a very tiny mine. It is. It's about 1,300 tons per day. And the entire surface expression of the Rook I project would fit in the Rogers Arena in Toronto there. So it's an incredible opportunity at an incredibly critical time for the planet with respect to clean air electrification. I've put some sensitivities there and I have circled $70 to $80 a pound. I just want to note, last time we've seen this cycle in uranium, which is starting now, and this is just history repeating itself. Back in 2004, the price of uranium was $10 a pound, and it had been for about a decade leading into 2004. Between 2004 to 2008, it went from $10 a pound to $140 a pound. And the actual average contracting price at that time was in the mid to high 70s. Now, what I'm saying here is, and very, very important for investors to realize, that the top 5 mines that were in production back in 04 to 08 all had long, healthy lives ahead of them. None of them are in production today. So this pricing cycle that we're about to experience, I think is going to be even realize higher uranium prices than when we saw it in 04, 08, where they went up to $140 a pound, long-term contracting averaged in the mid to high 70s. And look, with respect to NexGen's project, as I said before, at $75 a pound, we're going to be knocking on the top 5 of all mining companies worldwide. Just one aspect which I want to just take a few moments on is this is an incredibly technically competent asset. It's in competent basement rock. We have no underground water issues, and we have an exceptionally clean metallurgy. So it results in a very environmentally elite mining operation, and consequently lower capex, lower opex in order to operate the mine. One aspect, I just want to conclude with this one, is the exploration upside still at NexGen. On just the Rook I project, we have the most dominant land position in the southwestern section of the basin, along the edge of the Athabasca Basin. So in principle, we're looking for deposits at their shallowest. And on the left-hand red oval there is representative of the Patterson corridor, all those little picks there are conductor picks. We have the Patterson corridor there, which hosts the Arrow deposit. We found it with the very first drill hole on that target, and there hadn't been a drill hole for 4.5 kilometers around it. So what I'm saying is the prospectivity of finding additional zones of mineralization on the Patterson corridor is incredibly high. We've only explored about 10% of that corridor to date. And we have another 8 corridors running parallel on the Rook 1 property. We could have 10 rigs for 10 years and still not complete the geological evaluation of the Rook 1 property, yet that's on a foundation of having the world's best uranium deposit under development. And so, David, I might just conclude there with, in the interest of time, and hand over to any question and answers that you or your audience may have.
Great, thank you, Leigh. Since that graph is up there, you know, you began grassroots exploration earlier this year at Rook 1 for the first time in the last several years. You're not doing that for accretive pounds, are you?
No, we're not looking to, we could easily grow Arrow. We've got 80 million pounds that are in the inferred category. With infill drilling would go into measured and indicated. We have additional mineralization that isn't in the resource statement as we speak, that with additional mineralization, additional drilling would increase the resource statement. This exploration that we recently initiated is very, very bold. I want to be very clear here. We are very bold exploration philosophy with this program. So we are looking for brand new arrows. We're looking underneath Arrow because there's one geological basis that Arrow is the top of a far more broader system at depth. And then we're looking along strike from Arrow as well. And we're going to be going over the Dirksen as well. So we've got an enormous amount of tasty targets there. And as I said, we've only explored 10% of the Patterson corridor alone. We've got another 8 corridors yet to explore. And so it's bold exploration. Any type of mineralization that we discover, particularly of a high grade, well, as you're familiar with, David, Arrow, you know, it was a 5 centimeter slither of very high grade mineralization in hole 15, which then led to hole 30, which at the time was the 4th best in exploration history. Given all the other holes we've got at Arrow, I think that hole 30 is out of the top 20 now. Which is just incredible, with Arrow hosting 18 of the top 20 holes ever in exploration history. So we can't, you know, with the feasibility study completed, the EIS in the final stages of drafting, it was time to get the exploration team out there again and have 2 rigs exploring there.
Right, right. Yeah, you don't need a quiver unless you have multiple arrows. So with 25, let's say 25 to almost 30 million pounds of uranium to sell every year, does the prospect of placing that much material with nuclear utilities keep you up at night?
No, not at all. We are forecasting production based on our current schedule for the mid to later part of this decade. I mentioned earlier that between now and when we get in production, the profile of existing producing mines is going to actually deplete by more than 30 million pounds per annum. So Arrow alone is not even going to make up production, which is coming offline between now and when we're in production. So I don't see it as, doesn't keep me up at night whatsoever. We've got utilities have expressed their demand for offtake when we are in production. We are not at any point as we speak about to conclude any offtake arrangements whatsoever. We are focused on the development of the project, and that's all will all be done in good time. But it always also reflects, we believe the price of uranium is going to be substantially higher in that period just prior to commissioning, and we'll negotiate contracts in the context of the market at that time.
Okay, sounds great. We're almost out of time, but you know, you mentioned timeline. Where do you stand in the permitting process, and how long do you think this is going to take?
We're in the final stages of concluding our EIS. That is the culmination of 8 years of data collection and analysis. the EIS is really formal documentation of all of that work that we've been working side by side with the regulators on. And the government states a 2-year review process. It could be earlier, it could be later, but we're incredibly confident based on our dialogue and interactions with the regulatory bodies that we'll receive a very efficient permitting process, and which is reflective of all the work we've done over the last 8 years. And with that scenario, it could still take 2 years to get the final permit, but that won't inhibit our timeline through to cash flow in the latter part of this decade.
Perfect. Okay, with that, we'll end it. So thank you very much, Leigh. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Up next, we have baseload energy.